Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. In today's episode, I have my new friend Barb Davids sitting next to me. Barb is the founder of Compass Digital Strategies and has over 25 years of experience in digital marketing. She's helped ambitious business owners achieve 256% more organic traffic and 51% more sales. When not working, Barb enjoys running with her dog, Stone. And she just mentioned this to me right before we hit record here. She is literally moving back out to the desert in Arizona just so she can continue to run year round. Barb, I don't know if I told you this, but my wife and I, we've been getting back into running lately. And frankly, I'm not a huge fan of it. As I get a couple miles in, I just think to myself, why on earth am I doing this? I'm glad you found your passion. I don't know that it's going to stick very long for my wife and I, but welcome to the show, Barb. I appreciate it. Guys, Barb has so much knowledge she's going to be sharing with us today, specifically for our young business owners out there, how we can increase our marketing skills and our SEO strategies. I feel like this term is just thrown out there sometimes. I've personally looked up 1,000 YouTube videos on this exact topic. I have friends in the space. I have different colleagues, and I still don't fully understand this concept of SEO strategies. And so in today's episode, Barb is going to break them down for us. Just simple little tips and tricks on how we can improve them throughout our businesses. And sometimes even more importantly, if we don't want to handle that burden ourselves, how we can offload it to the right agent to deal with it for us. And what are some of the red flags on some of these agents that we should not be working with? There's a lot of marketers out there, and there's a lot of ones that just simply want your money. So Barb's going to help us walk through that exact process and make sure we're working with the correct ones. So guys, super excited to have her. With that being said, let's jump into today's episode. Barb, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be able to share my expertise. So thanks.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a very difficult topic sometimes.
Yeah.
I feel like SEO is like one of those buzzwords in business these days, and somebody can walk up to you at a convention or just a friend asking how the business is. Hey, how's your SEO going?
Right.
And I feel like it's a very taboo thing now as well, because so many people just assume they understand it, where in reality it's a very complex. I want to call it an algorithm because that's internally that's what it is. So tell us a little bit about SEO to begin with for all the newbies out there who don't have a clue about what it is. Give us the basic definition and we'll kind of dive in with that.
Sure. The basic definition is SEO, search engine optimization. And generally speaking, that means getting your website set up so that it can be found in Google when somebody types in a search for something that they want to know more about, like your service or your product. And traditionally speaking, also, it's all just basically non-paid. So it's not even just search engine organic, but it could also be like social organic. So anything that's not paid. So that's the general definition. Now, I will say, and I always joke about this, I have to walk around with like a big disclaimer on my head because in my line of work, like everything's changing all the time, but not more so than it is in this year because of AI and how things are happening so much with all the different platforms. And business owners are getting like pulled in so many directions, like where should they market their business? But I'm a firm believer in SEO because I feel like it's a more longer term sustainable solution, because once you get going with it, it almost, I mean, you still have to come back to it and do some things, and we can talk about what those things are, but it's almost like it's you put it out there and it kind of lives on its own in a way, and it stays out there. It doesn't just go away in like 24 hours like stories or something like that.
So as I mentioned, I have a couple friends in this space that have their own businesses. One of my really, really good friends I met in school, his name's Jonathan Lindsay. He owns a marketing agency, kind of like yourself, Barb. It's called Quantum Cube Marketing, and one of his expertise is SEO. And so as I was talking to him one day, he mentioned SEO. It's almost like a pursuit. It's a journey that you kind of continually go on. Like you mentioned, you can run small little ad campaigns that'll last a couple weeks, a month, and they'll bring you some clientele. They'll give you leads, and that's kind of where you work with for a little bit. But the process of SEO, at least how he described it to me, is you kind of start small and you learn and you improve and you learn and you improve. And then in 6 months to a year, you kind of start seeing these little fruits hanging there for you. And so I feel like in so many different ways nowadays. There's these marketers that go out there and promise you a billion leads. They're going to land you clients. They're going to get you $100,000 in revenue for your business in the next 6 months, or you don't pay. There's all these catchy little taglines out there, but as we all know with business, it's not a instant fix. It's there's a lot of things that have to go into it in order for it to work correctly. So
Yeah.
what kind of strategies do you have in place for the businesses you've helped, where you can kind of walk them through and say, hey, this process, it's not going to be just a snap of my fingers and everything's fixed, but we actually have to walk through this a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's part of the thing that's still kind of transitioning from the old think, like where people are like, oh, you just have to put this thing in ChatGPT, or you just have to do this, or you have a tool that does SEO for you. But you really have to still like do the things on your website. First, basically, once you set up a website, it's not going to just start taking and getting traffic from the search engines or organically. You have to give it some love, basically, with blog posts to be able to get in front of more people that way, because just having one page or a couple pages, let's say there's two businesses, for example, and your website has 2 pages and the other business has 20,000 pages. That's an exaggeration, of course. But the idea for somebody to come and look like Google to say, okay, well, which website am I going to show to the person who's searching? They're going to show the website with more information because it has more context and thinks that it has more of an answer for the person who's searching. So I think that's probably like the biggest thing. And it's when you break down SEO, really all it is understanding where your traffic is coming from. Because first and foremost, if you can't track it, that's what a lot of people get, I think, confused about. Because when they say they're getting SEO'd or they're getting the work done, people a lot of the time just spit out reports without any information. And that's where it gets a little confusing, because it doesn't track back to, is it generating traffic? Is it generating leads? Which is really what it should do. So if you get all this traffic, if you can generate or track it back to the leads, then that makes sense. That's how you can track and see if it's working. And a lot of the times these companies, like I was saying with the tools and stuff, they say that they'll do it for you, but they don't. Like, you still have to create the blog post, and
Mm-hmm.
they may write it, but it's not going to be in your tone or your voice. It's still not to that point today. And I still am a firm believer in, if you use a tool to do it, that tool is doing it for everybody else. So like, yours is not going to be unique. So why would anybody want to choose your website over somebody else's? So it's about setting up your website, like technically, of course, so that there's no errors on it. And there's like all kinds of free site audits you can do out there that says, hey, you've got a broken link, or hey, this needs to move faster, or something like that. And then you build out the pages, and there's a lot of things that you can do on a page to help Google see it. I actually have like 11 of them. I don't know, we probably shouldn't go through all of them, but essentially, if you're writing about the topic, a lot of it inherently happens as you're writing the page. And then you build out content and then you distribute it. And that's really what breaks down SEO, is just a site audit, creating content in front of the words that people are searching for. So if somebody's typing how to run a marathon, then your website comes up, or whatever the service may be. And then you just keep doing that.
So let me ask you this. In the age of AI, and I'm going to be honest, like whenever I have like some kind of important email I have to write, whenever I have a different thing I'm blasting out on social media, I'll craft it up myself. I put it in my own words. But one of the biggest things I use is I throw it into ChatGPT and I say, okay, is my grammar correct? Is there any way I can make this a little bit more clear or concise? Because sometimes we can go through these different word bubbles where we go word after word after word, and our point can be condensed down into a single line or two. And so, what is the benefits of using some of these tools that exist out there? And then what are some of the negatives that you've seen, besides the point you already mentioned, where if everyone's using them, sometimes it'll sound very repetitive?
I think where the tools come into play is just bringing into your vision the things you can't do on your own. But the normal business owner doesn't necessarily need that all the time, or they can just use it part of the time. So SEO tools have a lot of different ways that they work. So some of them will tell you keyword research and tell you like the volume and like per month, like is there 1,000 searches or is there 1,000,000 searches? And it will also tell you the competition of a particular phrase or a keyword. So is it going to be hard to rank for based on who's already ranking in Google for
Mm.
that? And then they go all the way up to a plethora of like content information, like building out content, what people are searching for. Um, and then it gives you like different ways to do the content. But then that's where I feel like that's content marketing. That's not SEO necessarily. It's a part of SEO, but the tools only go so far, and then they'll tell you, oh, this is the big one that really makes me mad, is with the site audits. I think they're great for the most part. They are built with the intention of helping the end user, but site audits don't take into account your business. So for example, if you have like a privacy policy or contact page, a lot of us forget to take that away from Google. Like if somebody were to land on that page by itself, in and of itself, it's not a great experience. Like if you land
Mhm.
on a privacy page, so you want to like de-index it, basically tell Google, don't show this page. But the tools will be like, hey, your page isn't showing, but they don't understand that it's meant to be that way.
Mhm.
So a lot of these tools don't take into context your specific business or your specific goals. And that's where it's a little tough, I think.
So let me ask you this too. I know you have incredible expertise working with a lot of service-based businesses in this realm. And one thing you just said kind of caught my attention here. It's if all these different businesses are going through and they're doing these site audits and they're performing the best of their capabilities, they're making sure that their website is coming up as near perfect as it possibly can on Google to their extent. If everyone is doing that, and I understand not everyone does do it, and that's why you can
Yeah.
get an advantage. But what
Yeah.
makes them different? So if you have for two service-based companies, let's say you had two HVAC companies, and they're
Mm-hmm.
both in the same city, they're a couple miles apart. What would set somebody else higher on the Google rankings than the other business, one of their competitors that's just, let's say, 5 miles down the road? What's the big differences that they can take in order to make this happen?
The ones that they have control over is their website and how the copy is written. That's
Okay.
probably the biggest one that they have control over. The stuff that they don't have control over are things, or the other one they have control over is site speed. So if one loads faster than the other, that could be a factor in which one shows up first. The other one is stuff that happens off the website. So things like other mentions from other websites, backlinks they're called, so you get links from other places,
Mm.
what people are saying about you on social or other websites. So they might not link back, but they're actually talking about your brand. Your Google business profile is a big one that I think a lot of people don't realize or don't know about. And that can also help. Even if you don't have a physical presence, you can use Google Business Listing because you just hide your address and tell Google it's okay. And that helps because of the reviews on there, because Google takes a look at reviews. So those are probably the bigger ones. And just in general, like marketing in general.
Mm.
So once you have your website and you have your content, if you're out distributing it, that's a portion of people coming back to your website. And Google can see when they're coming back to your website, are they sticking around or not? So those little things, like I know there's a lot more that Google has and knows about that they don't tell us about, even though there was a big leak, and that's a whole nother story. But it's like all of those things combined basically. And that's the funny thing too, right? You could do everything for your website, and let's say it's the same as somebody else's, but you don't have as many backlinks as the other person. You still could rank better than them. I've seen a lot of websites rank without backlinks. So it's not just any one thing that makes you show up or not show up. It's like all of the factors combined, and all you can do is try to hit all of those as much as possible, and do the best you can, and then wait.
So yeah, that's a good point. You definitely gotta wait. Like my friend told me, it's not just the snap of the fingers, like we mentioned, but
Yeah.
in the world, and you mentioned this as well, in the world where there's so many different things tugging the business owner in multiple different directions. There's the SEO over here. There's the marketing side on social media over there. There's the sales side over there. There's the customer acquisitions over here. There's just the day-to-day operations of the business up there. Like there is every piece of the puzzle that is pulling a business owner's attention one way or the other. And
Mm-hmm.
nowadays it could be very difficult because you almost have to be as near or close to perfect as you possibly can in every one of these discretions, or you'll get beat out by one of the bigger competitors that's already in the space. And so, what would be your piece of advice to somebody who is listening to this and they're sitting there thinking, like, gosh, this sounds like something I really need to get done, but I just don't know if I can dedicate the man hours to make sure I get this done exactly how I need to. Because at the end of the day, if you're the difference between first and second is pretty big, but then also the difference between Say if you were 18th down the list, odds are you weren't landing the client anyways when they searched it up. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give to a business owner that has their head spinning a million miles an hour?
So I'll start with this actually. I had this problem when I first started. So I had a website and I knew what it had to do, right? Because I'm in the space, but I couldn't figure out like why I didn't like it. And it was all about the copy. And I was like, okay, well, I need to feel good that once I get this traffic, they're going to want to work with me. Like when they land on the page, how can I get them to stick around? And I tried to do my own even blog posts and writing, and it was painful, basically. So, like that part of my business, I didn't have I wanted to do it, but I just couldn't do it in the right way that made me feel good about it. So I would hire out. And that's probably my best piece of advice. And I was very resistant to do that because I felt like I needed to do it on my own because I felt like it had to be my tone, my voice. But with a copywriter, if you get a good one, they learn that and they build out the content in your tone, and it really relieved a lot of my pressure, and I was able to focus on other things in the business rather than like, oh my gosh, does this sound right, does this not sound right? And frankly, it took me so long to write a blog post. I enjoyed it, but it was painful at the same time because I just couldn't figure out, and I couldn't get over the perfectionism of it, was really what it was. And so once I gave that off to somebody else, I could, who specializes in it, and that is what they do best, that really gave me a big sense of relief, and I could focus on moving on to the next thing. So that one was a lot bigger than I anticipated, even though I had heard it before. It's a very good one to do. It's just hire out when you're, I mean, it's like a mechanic, right? You're not going to work on your own unless you can work on cars, but most of us can't work on our own cars. So we hire out because we don't know how to do that.
So when do you think the appropriate time to hire out is?
Probably the best way it's gonna be a little woo woo. It's a feeling. Like you can definitely tell if you find yourself first of all just anguishing over something. That's the one way you can tell. The other way is if it's detracting from your main goals and it's taking too much time. And let's say you're trying to rework a service, or you're not spending enough time with the clients, or in other areas of marketing that are going to have a more direct effect, then that would be another key. So if you feel like everything's kind of slipping away, that's another thing to look at. If it's taking a chunk of your time that it shouldn't be, so that you can focus on your service and your product.
Now, I want to jump into something we talked about off air here. You mentioned to me that a lot of times when you're getting started on your business, you worked in this career for a long time and then you
Hmm.
eventually took the leap to start your own marketing agency.
Hmm.
There's a lot of fear that goes into that.
Hmm.
And a lot of the listeners here on the Get Over Yourself podcast, they live those fears day in and day out. Many have taken they've taken the leap and they've started their business, but they're in this stage where they're worried. They don't understand what's going to happen. They aren't making that consistent paycheck yet. Or there's
Hmm.
even the other side of listeners out here who maybe haven't taken that leap of faith yet. They're worried about starting. What piece
Yeah.
of advice would you tell them in that instance to either get going or just say, hey, as long as you keep putting in the reps and making sure you're making wise decisions for your business and you're making sales, you're going to be all right.
So what I'd like to say, just get over yourself.
Hey, there
It
we
is,
go.
it is,
I've
yeah.
heard that somewhere before,
Yeah, maybe somewhere. It is harder to do than, it's easier said than done on that, in that respect. And
but isn't
yes,
everything.
yes, exactly. And I understand now because I had the same fear, and I only saw it like after I started my business. That's the funny thing. Like I did my business in spite of the fear and I didn't even realize it. And then last year and the year before, I started going through some different things, and I just realized the fear is being like, whoa, stop what you're doing. We can't do this because something bad is going to happen, or I don't know what's going to happen. The brain is like, because I don't know, I don't want to do it. I want to stay safe where I'm at. I already have my, what I'm doing, and I don't want to change that.
Hmm.
And so if you can lay out the idea of, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I then work back from that, that can kind of help you work through and process what that fear might be. And it is talking to yourself on a daily basis. Like I used to laugh at affirmations. I was like, I'm not sitting here telling me I love myself. I'm not sitting here doing this. Like this is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But there is something with affirmations if you do it in a very true way. And it makes sense. So like, for example, you get up in the morning and you just wake up. Yay, I woke up. Like, it doesn't have to be that weird, but like if you say good things about yourself and try to keep doing that, that will help you work through the fear. So whatever that fear is, like do the opposite to show that you don't have the fear. I don't know if that even made sense now that I said it out loud, but
No, I
does
got
that
you.
help?
If you're trying to overcome a fear in something, it's putting
Yeah.
yourself in that situation to say, I can't overcome this.
Yeah.
If you're looking one example I've given here on the podcast before, I'm not a massive fan of heights. It's not that I don't mind being up high, but it's the fear of falling. And
Yes,
so
exactly.
I remember not too long ago, I went on a bachelor party retreat for my cousin right before he got married, and we went out to Lake Powell in Arizona, and we were cliff jumping. And all these guys think it's like the funnest thing to jump off a cliff into water. I'm just sitting here thinking like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. I hated it.
Right.
But despite me still not liking it afterwards, to get over my fear, I just had to eventually take that leap and jump into the water. And yes, it's
Yeah.
still not my favorite thing, but the point is I was able to do it. And so now
Yeah.
I know going in the future, not that I necessarily want to do it again, but I know I have the power and capability to do so.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah, my hands are sweating just thinking about that.
Oh
Thanks.
yeah, me too. Not a massive fan of it. But yeah, to
Yeah.
all the young business owners out there listening to today's episode, it can be very challenging to get started. Whether you haven't taken the leap yet and you're still trying to figure out your ideas, my challenge for all of you out there is just start something. It could be
Hmm.
the worst potential idea on earth. Go out, make one sell, recognize that it's not the best, and move on from there. You just got to start getting your feet in the water, because if you can't even take that first step in, you're not going to be able to fully eventually dive in at all. So, Barb, as we're coming up to a close of today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, I want to ask, there's different strategies you hear online. There's a lot of red flags that I'm sure you can recognize in the industry of working with different marketing agencies. What piece of advice would you give all the listeners out there today if they were going to choose to work with a marketing agency or an individual who could help them with their SEO or other marketing needs? What are some red flags you should look for that would be ding, 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 do not go to these guys? Or
Hmm.
on the opposite side, what are some green flags that would make for a good partner in a relationship?
A red flag is if they can guarantee any results. I don't think anybody can actually guarantee results. I think that they have had good results for sure, and they're using those as guarantees. And or if they say they can, it's probably not done in an ethical or sustainable way. So it's not a good long-term investment for your business. One of the good things is if they take into account your business. So, for example, in the SEO industry, if they care about getting you to rank number one, but they don't care if your leads are qualified or not and how it affects your business in the end, then they're not a good fit. But if they do and they care about after the click just as much as they do before the click, then that's a good partner.
That's perfect. And then what would be the ultimate, this is who you should be looking for? This is, if I was to put it out on a piece of paper and write down a definition of who I should work with in marketing, this is who it would be.
Look in a mirror. If it's someone that has your same values, if it's someone that you can resonate with, that you can chat with and feel comfortable with, then that's the person who you want to work with.
That's perfect. I love that advice. There's been a couple, we're searching right now for a couple different things in our business, and one thing that I've noticed, regardless from all the sales side of everything, and regardless from them trying to push their product or their service upon us, which that's business at the end of the day, we understand
Sure.
that. If I don't feel comfortable asking questions in our interaction, if I'm not fully understanding something and I can't even get up the courage to speak and ask them what the heck they're talking about, that's usually a red flag for me. And so, yeah,
Hmm.
looking in the mirror and just dissecting, can I sit there and have an honest conversation? Can I ask them questions and not feel dumb at the end of the day? That
Yeah.
to me is absolute gold. So I appreciate you for that, Barb. Thank you
Yeah,
for joining us, by
absolutely.
the way. It's been a while since I've had a marketer here on the show. And so I feel like as times change and different strategies come into play, it's always nice to get a little refresher on that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to catch you, where can they find you on LinkedIn or other socials where they could reach out to you?
The easiest way is to go to compassdigitalstrategies.com. You can find everything there.
Perfect. I'll include that, as always, everybody, in the show notes below. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or anything else, make sure to go check that in the description down below. Barb, once again, thank you for joining us on today's episode. And everybody, if you enjoyed today's episode and you know somebody who could benefit from it, Maybe it's your local coach from your sports team growing up and they have a small business. Maybe it's your pastor who's trying to grow his church, whatever it may be. Make sure to share this episode with them so we can continue to grow the show. You guys are my best form of marketing, so we can continue to produce episodes weekly on Fridays at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So with that all being said, we'll see you guys next week.